quiet before the storm, sort of.
That is not going to keep us on Earth, but is going to shoot us straight into space, is the one and only Jean-Pierre Murray-Kline, a visionary thinker whose ideas are bound to set us into space. Jean-Pierre, the stage is all yours, and so please come and tell us a little bit more about the space technologies in mining. Let's please give him a huge round of applause.
The massive stage. Thanks, Mr. DJ, Jean-Pierre, Elton John. So on, what I didn't care. Everyone, how are you all doing? Thanks for that standing ovation, that was great. Right, so I've got lots of notes here. So it's a pleasure to be chatting with you today. I'm a business and environmental technologist, and I've been invited to speak to you about something, but I just want to emphasize the fact that I am an environmentalist and also a technologist. So when I was invited to speak to you today, I quickly did some research on my clients, and I used ChatGPT-4. Anyone use it? Alright. So I had two websites to feed into the artificial intelligence. The one website was tangela.com, and the other one was SACEA.org.za. ChatGPT told me the following about my new clients. Well, JP, one of these organizations are focused on promoting and supporting the exploration and utilization of coal in South Africa. And the other is involved in mining and production of thermal coal, which is primarily used for power generation. Now here's the pickle, everyone. I am an environmentalist. I feel a bit like Greta Thunberg when I'm invited to these sorts of events. But I've made myself feel a little bit better, because I'm not here to talk about mining on this planet. So if I do a good job today, hopefully some of you pack up and head to the stars. So I feel a little bit better about that. But that said, everyone, there is absolutely no coal or oil on the moon. Fortunately, just like planet Earth, the ethical interest in fossil fuels is a little bit low in space. So, it's always good to think about the future and perhaps where you can diversify and use your skills elsewhere. And that's exactly why I'm here today. But before I get into that, I know that before today, none of you probably had any idea who I was or am. Anyone heard of me before? No problem. I did a bit of research, and I heard that there's a saying in the mining industry to tell a story. Am I right? It's called a quick trip down the hole. No? No? Okay. Well, here's a quick trip down JP's, my story. And in order to do this, I'm going to bring about some engagement, and I'd like you to please, those of you who haven't already got your cell phones open and on, to please take out your cell phones, and I'd really like you to do this, and switch on your data, your very expensive data bundles, and open up your internet browser. Please, I'd really like you to do this. Those of you who don't, I'm going to call up on stage, so whichever you prefer. Alright, once you've got your browser open, just put your hand up high up in the air so I can see. Got it? Fantastic. All right, now go to your search bar and I'd like you to type in my name. Sir, do you not have a cell phone? No cell phone, offline, okay. I'd like you to Google my name, which is incredibly long. It takes forever to fill in forms. It's Jean-Pierre Murray-Kline. That's spelled Jean hyphen P-I-E-R-R-E. New word. Murray, like Murray and Roberts. M-U-R-R-A-Y. We're not done yet. Hyphen K-L-I-N. Now you're going to find a lot about me on the internet, but I'd like you to please find the website. Jean-Pierre-Murray-Kline.co.za. Who's found it? Got it right. Please give it a click. Right, now the reason I've asked you to do that is just to help with my search engine optimization, so thank you. Now there's a few tabs on my website, everyone, and you can say this website if you think I'm interesting and you'd like to learn a bit more about me later on. But the one I'd like you to please click on is the About tab. Now, the About tab is going to tell you a little bit about the type of person I am, that I grew up in the Western Cape in a small, in a suburb called Plumstead or Southfield. And I'm the oldest of 9 children that we know of, on my dad's side. That I've got a very rare eye condition called Duane's eye syndrome, which is in fact why I wear these nerd glasses. I'll also tell you that I started my first business while in school. By the age of 19, I invoiced my first $1 million. And since then, I've started many e-businesses. There's also a menu tab called Services, and I will tell you that I can do just about everything online, anything from compliance to law to app development and so forth. I'll also tell you that I'm a future thinker, which is essentially a digital architect, so I can plan a digital infrastructure for an entity. And I will also, you'll find a menu item called Books, which are my published books. But the one I'd like you to please click on is my Articles tab. And the reason I'd like you to have a quick look at that is as a business and environmental technologist, I study about 18 different subjects at any given time. If there is something that influences business, technology, or humanity broadly, I study it. And then I write about it and I consult. And my objective as a business and environmental technologist is to make sure that technology, nature, and people live in harmony, or sustainable, or ethical. All right, that's enough about me. You can put your phones away. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the reason I'm here today, everyone. And I've made some very, very important notes because this is a very exciting subject and I don't want to miss anything out. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, coal cowboys, shaft surfers, I think that's what they call them, and tunnel tigers. Let's move on to the first slide. Let me be very clear. Mining in space is the future. If you're going to be around still in about 100, 200 years, which will be possible if you're prepared to get a bionic implant, which is something I write and study about, you will be able to mine space. But for those of you who prefer not to live that long, that's all right. Engineers, the people of today, are going to be able to engineer the future. Sort of like the first men and women built, developed the first boats which sailed the oceans. You get to engineer the future. That boat was called the Santa Maria. Now the people who invented that boat never got to see the new lands, but they did engineer the future. Now I know space isn't everyone's cup of tea or perhaps bottle of beer, better, yes? But the truth is, you don't need to know who Captain Spark is to appreciate the resources available in space. I can tell you that there are already economists factoring in to their equations, as long Excel spreadsheets, just how space mining is going to influence our economies. In fact, I think it's just a matter of time before Martin Creamer starts to report about it on SAFM. Now, my job today is to get you up to speed on what generally is going to be a massive part of the mining industry's future. Next slide, please. I brought my own engineer today. He was going to come stand here, but he's so tall, I would have. Alright, so let's start with the Force, everyone. I'm not talking about the Force in Star Wars. I'm talking about the Force that got people onto the moon way back in 1961. What was that force? It was ego, everyone. Yes, the posturing between the United States of America and Russia catapulted man up into space. Now, new sciences, advancements in communication, unfortunately, some technology related to war, humanity's natural desire to explore played a part. But in order for us to get out to space, we needed a massive cash injection, and we got one. $25 billion US. That is a lot of money even today, spent essentially on a pipe dream. Now, there have been 6 manned missions to the moon, but since 1972, it's pretty much been radio silence. Why, I hear you say? Okay, I'll ask myself why. Well, there's many reasons for that, but the summary version is that they've had other priorities to focus on. But there's a shift in 2024. And it involves revisiting this concept of space and its potential resources. We're starting to appreciate that life on Earth actually needs space, both literally and figuratively. But where does space actually start, everyone? Anyone want to care for a guess? How many kilometers? Anyone? All very shy. It's roughly 80 to 100 kilometers above us. It's not very far. This is called the Keynote line, everyone. It's not that far away. Now, once in space, you're going to come across a few things. The first things you'll come across are satellites. Next slide, please. Now, there are 3 types of satellites, or they're grouped in 3 types at least. The first group is called LEO. It stands for Low Earth Orbit, and you'll find this roughly 120 to 2,000 kilometers above our heads. Next is MEO, Medium Earth Orbit, between 2,000 and a whopping 36,000 kilometers. And then finally, we have GEO, which stands for Geostationary Orbit. And this is basically where satellites stay perfectly fixed in a position above planet Earth. And that is exactly 35,786 kilometers above us. Now, there's a few reasons why we've got these different zones, and I'm not going to get into that today. And then, traveling at 28,000 kilometers per hour is the International Space Station, ISS. This $150 billion multi-purpose space station is just 400 kilometers above us. Here's an interesting nugget, everyone. Maybe you'll believe me or not, but you can Google. In 2001, Pizza Hut delivered the first pizza to space, to the ISS space station. True or false? It's true. Cost $1 million US. And the pizza was cold by the time it got there. But that's not the strangest thing you'll find if you look into space. Does anyone have a telescope? No one? Great toys or tools. If you look orbiting the sun, never look directly at the sun, you may find a Tesla. There is a Tesla orbiting the sun. This we can thank Elon Musk shot it up into space. Depending on the strength of your telescope, you may also find Lego or Luke Skywalker's saber. Some interesting things out there. The vast majority of things we'll find in 2024 is space junk, everyone. There are in fact 36,000 pieces of space junk orbiting the planet at the moment, and that's mostly from decommissioned satellites or just broken parts of rockets. So 36,000. But satellites are catching up. In 2017, we had 1,200 200 operational satellites. 10 years later, in 2027, we are expecting 12,000 from Starlink alone. In fact, by 2030, Starlink will have more satellites in space than any other space agency. We're expecting about, just want to check the number here, 50,000 machines. At that time, should Elon Musk wish to take over global communications, he will be able to quite easily. Starlink pretty much has nothing to stop it at the moment except local regulations, perhaps the Competition Commission, or in South Africa we've got ICASA. Now Starlink currently doesn't operate in South Africa because they won't accommodate the 30% BEE regulations, so ICASA has rejected their application. In spite of this, Starlink plans and is going to be able to be earning in excess of $30 billion a year. By the way, everyone, I applied and was nominated for one of the 4 portfolio positions at Parliament, the ICASA committee, so we'll see if that gets off the ground. So, with all these things shooting around our head, I hope you agree that space is pretty cluttered. There's something worth a Google called the Kessler syndrome, and I'm not going to get into that now, but essentially if that happens, humanity will never, ever leave the planet. Moving on. The first natural body you will come across in space that is relatively close, and relative is not really an apt description because it's 384,400 kilometers away, is our moon. Now there is so much space between Earth and the moon that you can fit every single one of our planets between the Earth and the moon. Every single one of the planets in our solar system. This distance, in spite of it being so massive, is only a fraction of just how big the universe actually is, our observable universe. It's very difficult for a keynote speaker or a writer to put it into words. So what I did is I quickly found a video, and I think it gives a pretty good example, an explanation. It's about 2 minutes to watch, and if we could just full screen it, and you could appreciate the size of the space around us. It's all right, if you can't fix it, we can move on. I think you will get the idea that there's a lot of space out there. There's in fact more space than we could ever explore in our lifetime, unless we could actually slow down space. You can jump into the next slide, thank you. post your CV. Come to you later. So, space is pretty big, everyone. We will never be able to, in our lifetime, get to explore it. But even in the next decade, there's infinite possibilities. So in your lifetime, there's lots to do. So why is no one doing this? That's another question. I think one of the reasons people are not currently exploring space is because they feel it's elitist. Anyone agree with me? There's enough to spend our money on Earth. It's more than enough problems here on our own planet. And I'd have to agree with them. However, next slide, please, Mr. Technician. Thank you. What people don't know, that's the next one, thanks. There we go. Is that without our space adventures, we would actually not have many of the inventions we currently use here on Earth. Here are just a few. Telemedicine, bone loss measurement machines, insulation pumps, automatic ones. We wouldn't even have baby formula. It's a bit of a weird one. We wouldn't have compression algorithms. We wouldn't even have LED lighting, digital image sensors. The truth is, we wouldn't be able to communicate or even entertain ourselves. Another slow uptake, everyone, is because the entities that were championing space adventures back in the past were governments. Right now, they've got other priorities. But when we did have their attention, they put into place some laws. I'll quickly shoot through these. The Outer Space Treaty, which was signed in 1967. There's the Rescue Agreement, in case you get lost in space. There's a law to come and rescue you. That was signed in 1968. And then there's the Registration Convention, signed in 1976. Now, the reason I'm sharing laws, everyone, is because there is no law governing mining in space or any type of business in space. In fact, there's massive loopholes. One is the fact that there's no explicit law of ownership of resources. This means that you could, if you wished, go out to space, collect some diamonds, bring them back down to Earth, and they could legally belong to you. Next slide, please. Thank you, sir. I call space adventures the next Wild West. And space needs to be pursued for life on Earth to continue, not just for economic reasons, everyone. Scientific discovery, knowledge, technological advancement, economic growth, and industry development will all stall if we limit ourselves to what's happening on Earth at the moment. Now, space adventures, everyone, are going to rely not on governments, but on people like those in the room. Businesses are better suited to pursue space adventures. Space is business. Let me try and offer some tantalizing space opportunities for some of the businesses in this room. Let's start with the first one. We can do the next slide, please. We got the correct one. Yes, we have. Space tourism, everyone. Anyone scared of heights? Probably, this one's probably not for you. Space tourism really offers some unique opportunities, very exciting adventures. I believe in the next 30 to 80 years, you will be able to book a trip off the planet as easily as booking to Europe. And you probably won't need a visa. The next one is filming in space. Now this might sound crazy, everyone, but it has already happened. Do you know who's done it? The Russians. I'm going to try to pronounce the name of this movie. Anyway, it's a Russian movie. It aired last year, and it was the full-length movie ever filmed in space. But right now, Mr. Tom Cruise is planning his own movie, and I've got no doubt that will be a mission impossible. Let's move into manufacturing. Now, here's something interesting. Some things manufactured in space will literally be better. And this is because of microgravity. Things combine differently in space. So electronic components could be superior if made off-world. Things like optic fibers as well. Energy from space. This is a big one. Power off Earth, let's say a geosynchronous satellite with photovoltaic panels, it can harvest enough energy, everyone, to power all our needs on Earth. The problem is getting it back down to Earth. Last month, Eskom published a research article proposing a 36-kilometer cable running down and feeding it into the city of Johannesburg's power grid to power their smart meters. Of course, I'm talking nonsense, but it is actually a valid theory. The way we would probably get it to work, everyone, is by converting the electricity into microwaves. Now, this might sound a little bit scary, but we can beam microwaves down to Earth. The array would have to be massive, and we should probably put it in a desert or perhaps out at sea. And theoretically, this will work very well and pose very little risk. Now, to infinity and beyond, or perhaps just to the moon. A term entrepreneurial engineers should know is called ISU. This stands for In Situ Resource Utilization, and the concept is basically about mining or harvesting the resources out in space instead of bringing everything up from Earth. And it's not just about the gadgets or the complicated minerals. We need to find normal things like water and oxygen. Next slide, please. The moon, everyone, has helium-3. This is a super isotope you will not find on Earth. It has the potential to power all of our needs here on Earth. And as you can see, that is a legitimate article. We are trying to harness that energy. In addition, the moon has in its top layer, it's not called soil, its top layer, enough oxygen for 8 billion people for over 100,000 years. In the poles and the craters, we also expect to find water. So the moon isn't as barren as you think it is. Let's move on to asteroid farming. Now this is probably the most cowboy idea. A lot of engineers and business owners are rolling around in their heads at the moment. Now, the largest asteroid that we've got in our solar system is called Ceres. And they range between a few meters up to a few kilometers. But Ceres is 939 kilometers. It's basically 1/13 the size of planet Earth. And it looks a lot like our moon. It's so large that it was given dwarf planet status in 2006. Now, in total, we've got 1.3 million asteroids orbiting our sun, and about 31,000 which come close to Earth. Close is, of course, a relative term. There's 3 types of asteroid names, and I think we've named them after cars. The first type is called C-type, Mercedes. And this asteroid is largely composed of carbon, sort of like Mercedes. Then there's an S-type, which I think is a Jaguar, yes? Just like Jaguar, and they're composed of silicate minerals. And then there's the third type, my favorite, M, a Mercedes, and they're mostly metallic. And these are filled with high iron and nickel content. Another interesting thing to know, everyone, is all the minerals that we are currently mining here on Earth, such as the heavy metals, gold, platinum, iridium, are all from asteroids. Every single one of them. The heavy metals on Earth, while the planet was developing, sunk to the core, which means miners on Earth are already technically miners of space. So how do we get to asteroids, everyone? Next slide, please. All right. That problem has already been solved. We've in fact been to 15. Let's talk about mining in space. In 2024, it's still a pipe dream, everyone, unfortunately. But it's going to change, and let me tell you why. There's this one asteroid, it's called 511 Dividend. You may want to write that down. It's got a radius of about 160 kilometers, everyone. This one space rocket has within it 27 quintillion US dollars worth of nickel, iron, and cobalt. 27 quintillion. There are some nerds who got together one evening and tried to work out how much we need to buy Earth. They came up with 5 quadrillion. Now, a quadrillion is less than a quintillion, which means with this one asteroid, you could buy Earth and every other planet if it was for sale in our solar system. And that asteroid is just waiting for you. At its closest orbit, it is only 279 million kilometers away. Next slide, quickly, please. I know that sounds far, but with the Parker Solar Probe, which travels at 700,000 kilometers per hour, we've actually invented something that travels that fast. It only takes 17 days to get there. An interesting link to space, to track space objects, is called spacereference.org, if you want to get yourself a hobby. Now, Jupiter is just one of tens of thousands in our solar system. The estimated wealth of all the asteroids in our solar system is 700 quintillion US dollars. Of course, I think economist Darwin Roth would agree with me that if we brought this all down to Earth, the markets would crash. For example, our remaining gold reserves is only 57,000 metric tons, valued at 3.4 trillion US dollars, nowhere near quadrillion or quintillion or anything close to that. Fortunately, I believe that most of what we mine in space will remain more valuable in space because either the exercise of bringing things down to the Earth or eat into profits. So my prediction is what we mine in space will probably be used in space. Next slide, please. There's a few big players in the industry at the moment. Probably know them by name. Space mining, future adventures, space adventures, is going to be so diverse, it's going to be impossible for any one company, even those that have a monopoly at the moment, to do everything. This means that in the future, there is potential, tremendous potential for startups. This race has already started. There's a company called Astroforge. They're currently advertising job positions on their website, by the way, everyone. Another one is Carbon Plus and TransAstra, and they're just a handful of the ones you will find on the internet. Please, next slide. Anyone who perfects technology for space mining will also be able to, with a little bit of tweaking, use the equipment for deep sea mining. And the reason I want to mention this now, everyone, is because there's tremendous funding potential for deep sea mining. Next slide, please. There's lots of this on the internet, so that activity could in fact fund your space activity. Another opportunity is actually processing materials in space. Have I convinced anyone yet to leave the planet and do mining in space? No, they're all quite comfortable. It's all right. Well, let's talk about, once you've made the decision to go, how do you get there? And the great news is, everyone, you don't need to leave Earth to make money from space. For example, the concept of geosynchronous satellites, which is probably the most important scientific tool for space travel and also things like communication, was shared in Wireless World magazine in 1945 by Mr. Arthur C. Clarke, and he sold this for only $40 US. Geosynchronous satellites. You can imagine a few years later he was kicking himself because if he had patented it, he would probably have become a billionaire. My point being, everyone, is there's tremendous opportunity right now just to patent technologies here, make your money here on Earth, and never leave the planet. Next slide, please. For those of you who do wish to make that space adventure a reality. You're going to need a space vehicle, and probably a very good divorce lawyer. There's several spaceships available. If we could just move on to the next slide, I think. No, you can go back, that's fine, thank you. I can't actually see the slides on the side. So we've got a few spaceships available, which you can piggyback on. The one is called Crew Dragon, developed by SpaceX. It's probably the most famous one. There's Starliner, also famous now, but for the wrong reasons. They've currently had a problem, and they have got some astronauts stuck in space at the moment. We've got some Chinese space crafts. The one is called Soyuz, which is a workhorse. There's Cygnus, also designed to be a cargo space craft. There's Dragon Cargo, developed by SpaceX. There's Orion, which I've seen at a launch pad before. We've got another Chinese vessel called Tenzhou, and then a final one called Chengzhou, also developed by China. We've also got a few robots up in space. The most famous one, Perseverance and Curiosity. The two lesser known ones are Juno and Insight. We've got some future missions planned. There's the NASA's Artemis program, the Astroforge orbital mission, and NASA's Psyche mission. Now, once you're at the moon, or even an asteroid or Mars, you're going to need some mining equipment. If we can move on to the next slide. And this list is the list of equipment we currently have. Look at this as a potential opportunity, everyone. We do, however, have some ideas on how to mine once we get there. One is surface mining, which we probably use on asteroids. We could use a specialized bucket excavator, drilling, boring machines, magnetic mining. But the one I find most interesting is biomining, where we actually use microorganisms to extract metals from the rocks. For those of you who are keen to invent something for space mining, you're going to eventually need somewhere to test it. You're going to need a space station. Now, there's actually two. There's the ISS space station, which I mentioned earlier, but we've also got one made by China. It is called the Tiangong Space Station. If you take a spacewalk on the outside, you will see a tag outside called Made in China. Don't be surprised if you see that on the ISS as well. So you've got your gadget onto the space station. You're now going to need to do your experiments. This is where you need to start saving some money, everyone, because to rent an astronaut is not cheap. It's $130,000 US per hour. So you'll need to start saving. But don't panic. I think the price is going to go down because we're going to have more space stations in the future. Currently in the pipes are the Lunar Gateway, the Aximon Space Station, and then there's going to be the Russian Orbital Space Station. Now, to end on the subject, and before I open up the airlocks to some questions, I am going to talk about something closer to home. South Africa, or Africa in space. Now, South Africa has been a leader in mining. Africa is no stranger to mining in general. What is our future in space, and what skills do we currently have for space adventures? In 1994, South Africa officially ended its space program. It was initially developed during the apartheid era. We get the next slide, please. The Republic of South Africa back then was very notable for a series of space machines, space vehicles called the RSA series, which were roughly modeled off the Jericho missile technology from Israel. South Africa has developed and launched several small satellites, all with peculiar names. There's the Sunband Sat, there's the NanoSat, the Tiny, the ZAQ-1 and the ZAQ-2. But none of these have been launched from South Africa. In Africa, we've got Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, and Ghana. They've all launched satellites, but none of them from our African soil. Africa does not have a spaceport yet, but it's going to happen. 2024, we have the Denel Overberg Test Range in the Western Cape. This was established in the 1980s. It's had 3 successful suborbital launches between 1989 and 1991. The Denel Test Range is a really important spot for South Africa, or Africa. It's in a perfect position, southernmost tip of our continent. It's ideal for LEO satellite launches, sun-synchronous and polar orbits. Probably the most famous space adventure story or activity is the Square Kilometre Array, or SCAR project. The SCAR project is an international project. Our goal is to build the most sensitive and largest radio satellite telescope in the world. We've got components in South Africa and all the way to Australia. Now, in 2010, South Africa relaunched the South African National Space Agency. We actually have our own space agency. Very exciting. And they're important to know about. They are about promoting science and technology, Earth observation, space operations, space science, but they've got a focus on space engineering. So they are an excellent institution to collaborate with if you are a business. 2 years ago, 2022, the University of KwaZulu-Natal started their very own aerospace systems research institute called SACEA. Their focus is to design, develop, and testing of aerospace propulsions and flight systems. This year, the SAPHIRE, which stands for Static, Air-Breathing, Fuel-Free Inertial Reaction Engine, was successfully tested. It's projects like this, everyone, that makes me believe that before the end of 2030, we will launch our first payload from South Africa. That will be pretty cool. WITS offers an accredited undergraduate aeronautical engineering degree, and on our continent, we've got about 20 other universities offering something similar. Next slide, please. Fantastic. My closing point is, Space Adventures is not a boys' club. In fact, the ladies are in many ways leading the industry. We've got Dr. Adrienne Morris, who I've worked with in one of my businesses. She's a physicist, a technologist, focused on astrobiology. And then there's Lunka, another female inspiration. She's won awards, and she's actually a rocket scientist. My point being is anyone with any of the business in this room could become a change champion and engineer the future of mining. And in tradition, I always tend to end my talks with a joke, and here it comes. We can have the next slide, please. What did the astronaut say to his wife? He needs more space.